Merhaba, ben Lara. Davet için çok teşekkür ederim. Sürdürülebilir bir gıda sistemine geçiş sağlamaya odaklanan bir impact yatırım şeklinde çalışıyorum. Ve Blue Horizon'ın yatırım ve etki ekiplerinden analistim. Şimdi bir prezentasyonu paylaşayım ve sunumun ikinci bölümünü İngilizce olarak devam edeceğim. Süper. So food systems today account for anywhere from 24% to 34% of our global greenhouse gas emissions. So if you look at the IPCC report, which was published in 2014, they accounted for 24%, which is quite outdated. So nowadays, they actually believe that food systems account for 30 to 34%. And this is a very close second to those emitted by the energy sector. It's also been made clear that feeding 10 billion people by 2050 sustainably will require transformative change. And then, further considering the negative impacts that the global climate change has had on arable land, habitats, we truly believe that this is a sector that requires immediate attention. So sustainable foods is also one of the only areas that can address the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals, while other sectors can only contribute to a few. So what is the solution to the global climate crisis that we all face? This is something that at Blue Horizon we've called the protein transformation. And the protein transformation describes a transition away from animal sources of protein towards alternative sources. So animal-based proteins can be replaced with alternative proteins that are already or soon to be equivalent to meat products in terms of taste, texture, and price. And this comes in the shape of three different technologies. So first, you have plant-based proteins, which are plant-based foods with good sources of protein based from peas or other legumes, and then serve as a good basis for meat substitute. The second is microorganism-based proteins. So these are from fungal or bacterial sources grown in a liquid suspension from which a very specific type of protein can then be extracted. And this is nothing new. We've all have been doing traditional fermentation for hundreds of years now. We use it for beer, wine, yogurt making. And what we call with precision fermentation is when we use these microorganisms to produce very specific functional ingredients. And then lastly, we have cell-based proteins, which is also called cultivated meat or cultured meat. And this is produced by cultivating animal cells directly to grow connective tissue, fat, or muscle tissue in order to imitate the structure of conventional meat. And this basically means that we can completely remove the animal from the process and still end up with a product that is real meat. So at Blue Horizon, we basically developed a very deep understanding of the alternative protein industry. And we published part of this research done in collaboration with BCG, the Boston Consulting Group. We basically created this quantified market model for alternative proteins and discovered that once alternative proteins reach parity, and this is parity in terms of taste, texture, and price, this would enable a surge in adoption and lead to alternative proteins being well positioned to reach 11 to 22% of global protein supply by 2035. So this year, we then did a second part of the research and published our second report by conducting one of the most comprehensive consumer surveys in this field that we're aware of. So we basically surveyed around 4,000 consumers in 7 countries on what was needed for customers to further increase alternative protein consumption. And we discovered that in a lot of cases, the market sentiment was that plant-based proteins were not meeting consumer expectations. And we then followed by doing a deep dive in what consumer expectations were within different markets. And then in the second part of the report, we focused on the surge of adoption and elucidated to what it could mean in terms of climate impact. And then to do this, we teamed up with the BCG Center for Climate and Sustainability, who are experts in quantifying climate impact across sectors, not just in food systems, but also helped us, quantify potential emission savings unlocked by the protein transformation. So following the survey, we discovered that the biggest barriers to mass adoption of alternative proteins across all markets was split into 3 key themes. So the first is health and nutrition, which is the global key motivator for choosing these proteins. And we basically discovered that consumers today were quite disappointed, as a lot of plant-based products that are available in the market now are heavily processed and perceived as not healthy enough. The second key theme is food safety and security, and this is quite regional and less of an issue for Europe and the US, as consumers have a base level of trust in the products available in the shelves today. But in certain regions, especially China and the UAE, it's come up that product safety was a big concern and one of the top inhibitors for increased adoption. Consumers in this market basically want to see novel foods be certified as safe by a trusted source. And then lastly, the third theme is prices below parity. And this, was a key finding where no customers in any group in any country were willing to pay a premium for a product at parity. So talking about parity, when will price parity happen? So parity for some plant-based products are actually right around the corner. So we believe that this could actually be met in late 2023. And then for microorganism-based products, so these are the ones created through fungal or bacterial sources, this could be reached as early as 2025 based on our current forecasts. So, and these are obviously very much averages. You will have plant-based whole-cut chicken fillets that are in the pipeline of some of our portfolio companies, but these have a few more years to come. And then lastly, you have animal cell-based, which today is quite early, still nascent, but we still believe that it could actually reach parity in 10 years' time already. And then you have this second interesting part, which we dove into deeper into the second report, and these are hybrid products. So advances in technology have occurred along the entire alternative protein value chain, and this was the emergence of hybrid products. And hybrid products are products, for example, that are 80% plant-based and 20% cell-based. And this is basically a way of using fermentation-based or animal cell-based ingredients to reach consumers more quickly and to reach price parity faster. So to wrap this all up, in our first report, we discovered that by 2030, the shift from plant-based beef, pork, chicken, egg alternatives would create about 0.85 gigatons of CO2 equivalent in savings. And this sounds small, but the savings potential is actually equivalent to decarbonizing about 95% of the aviation industry, or also enabling an 11% reduction in the emissions that is projected to be released in 2030. And these are projections done by the United Nations current policy scenario. So from a macroeconomic perspective, investment in plant-based proteins has the highest CO2 equivalent savings per dollar of invested capital of any sector. And we basically quantified the carbon emission savings per $1,000 investment for decarbonizing different sectors. And it turned out that plant-based proteins are the low-hanging fruit when it comes to mitigating the climate crisis. So we basically converted the emission savings into a financial gain, which we call impact on capital employed, very similar to return on capital employed. And we did this by using a carbon price. So this is the end of my presentation. Sorularınız varsa bana e-mail olarak gönderebilirsiniz. Buradaki QR kod ikinci raporun QR kodudur ama size e-mail olarak da gönderebilirim. Teşekkürler.
Biz teşekkür ederiz Derya. Harika bir sunumdu.
Süper. Umarım zamanında yaptım.
Gayet iyiydi. Senden önce de Kerem Elikçi vardı. Onunla da böyle belki dinleme fırsatın olmuştur. Tam böyle aynı zaman dilimlerini verdiniz. Yani bir 2030 yıllarında bambaşka şeyler tabağımızda olacak gibi anlıyorum ben anlattıklarından.
Aynen öyle. Aynen öyle.
Çok teşekkürler katıldığın için.
Ben teşekkür ederim.
Şimdi bizim bir saatlik aramız olacak. Öğle yemeği aramız. Ardından saat 1'de herkesi yeniden bekliyoruz. Görüşmek üzere.